required to create will be the definition. I'll just go next. Okay. Now let's just create a view. So I'll just say Z sample C view. Okay, then there is something called define view, which allows me creating a view onto the system. Okay, a CDS view. So which is, if you see, we have just take one back step that we'll not create a CDS view entity. So in RAP, most of the thing, or I can say all the basic nodes are created using view entities and not the CDS view. But there used to be something called CDS views earlier. Okay, so what it is, and we'll start with that. So ultimately you will have the basics that you will need in order for you to learn the RAP in detail. So as you can see, this CDS view, okay, over here, it's saying define view, the name as select from this. And when I open this, there is a view entity. So you won't see much difference other than one thing, that here in the view and the view entity, in view, you will see one more important thing called SQL view name, which is nothing but your, in layman's term, you can think of a SC11 view, which is an application server layer component. Your RAP is totally database layer component, which executes everything and anything on database layer. And that's why it does not have something called SC11 view or SQL view. Okay. Now the rule says that you should specify a name for this SC11 view. So I'll just say Z sample, but the name should be different. So I'll just say, I'll just give any random name. Now I want to fetch the data from this. So for example, I want to fetch data from my travel. So I'll just copy this. Okay, and I'll say I want to fetch the data. So I'm just creating a empty view, nothing else. So I do have a view. Now it will seem exactly similar like that of the interface view. The only difference you will be able to see over here will be that it has a SQL view and few other annotation which talks about authorization and few annotation relevant to ABAP catalog. So as you can see here, you won't have anything relevant to ABAP catalog. So ABAP catalog is the only difference that will come into picture while you are going to the CDS view entity. Okay. Now, if I just activate this, couple of things would happen.
Sumit, if there are of all the other artifacts that are there in the tabs, is it possible that you could just remove those from the tabs right now? Means just cancel those objects,
Done.
because it kind of is getting confusing.
Done. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess this is what you want, right? I mean, I understand, pretty much understand. So that's fine. Okay, one thing which I might need, so that's something I'll just keep open if in order for me to do the comparison and in order for you guys to understand. So there is the one. Okay. Okay. So there is the difference between a normal CDS view, which is having a SQL view. So the moment I activated, maybe if I just go over here, you would see that a dictionary object, a view got created called the sample view. So at the time of activation, your database layer component CDS view has an application server layer component called S11 view also associated with that. And that's the reason that it was a bit slow. And that's the reason, I mean, I can say it was pretty faster while we are comparing to it to the normal S11 view. But still, when we compare it with the CDS view entity, definitely CDS view entity is a new way to go for. Okay. Now, if I just go over here and I'll just say, I'll just run it as a ABAP application, you will see that you should be able to see the amount of data it is carrying. Looks good, right? Now, what I'll do is I'll just go back and I would try to view one more thing. So for example, I do have a data of a travel. Now I want the data from one of my other component called travel, one of my other component called booking. Okay, so I'll just open the object, which is this one. Okay, so I would like to copy the name of it. And now I would like to also have the data of the booking over here. So all I do is I'll just say I would do a inner join. So for example, I can call the travel as T1. So I'll just say as T1 and I'll just associate it with like inner join and I'll just say this booking as B1. Okay. And the joining component, or I can say joining condition will be that T1 dot travel ID equal to B1 dot travel ID.
Yes, Sumit, actually, I'm not able to see the screen.
Is it only for you or it's for everyone?
I can see
I
Let me
mean,
come
I too
on.
can see.
it's visible. It's visible.
okay. Thanks. Um, okay, yeah, perfect. Maybe rejoin. Okay. So here I can see that I have a join on the travel, which is coming from a travel table and the booking table. So it means it will give me the both the data. But the confusion over here will be the database table won't be able to identify from which table you are willing to fetch which information. Okay, and that's the reason that you are able to see this confusion. So here what you have to do is you have to specify the column which are available in both of them and you have to specify the table area. So I'll just say from T1, please fetch the travel ID as well as customer ID and the currency code. And if you want to, fetch the information relevant to booking as well, I might say B1 dot. Okay, I would say B1 dot, and here I would be interested in fetching the booking ID. And I might say is that's booking ID over here, and I would say B1 dot. Another one say, let's just say career ID. Yeah, career ID. So which particular career was used in case of the travel? And the last, maybe we'll take one more meaningful information, which will be, for example, the booking date, for example. Okay. Now, as you can see, we are getting multiple warnings over here. Okay, if I just put a cursor, if you see, it is a cloud. Okay, so in cloud, everything is very strict. So cloud would suggest that whenever you are going with something, just go very exact. In your normal on-premise system, there was a leverage that you are getting that it was not very strict. So for example, I do have a 3 column which are common in both of them, then I have to specify alias to remove the ambiguity. But in case I do have a column which are only specific in one table, for example, this one, then I used to avoid specifying those. But in case of a cloud, it's very strict. You have to specify this, otherwise you will get an warning. And in many organizations, you would see that code with a SCI or ATC warning are also not delivered. Okay, so you have to remove all those warnings. So currently that's not what we are focusing on. But yeah, just for you to understand how the terminology, how the checks in cloud would happen. Okay, first. Second, as we are joining data between the travel and booking, I can simply say the primary key would differ. So I can say that the primary key over here will be the booking ID as well. So if you try specifying key over here somewhere in towards the end, definitely it would be an error because key should always start at the beginning of the view. Okay, so I'll just cut this and I'll just paste it over here. And here you would see that in CDS view, you can have the keys and everything started specified towards the beginning of this particular table, beginning of this particular view. Okay, so I'll just activate this. And now if I start viewing the data out of both of this, and if I just open this and I'll run it as a web application, you would see that I do have a data coming from this travel. In this travel 001, there are two bookings which were done 001 and 002. So that's why the travel information will be common. But the moment I just go in the booking, you would see that these are the booking ID. The booking IDs are 001 and 002. And the booking was done on the same day for on the same carrier for that. So maybe you are going on the Indigo on the same date you are having the another flight as well that you are planning to take. Possible. Okay. So this is how the joins would work. Now navigating, or I can say going to the direction on which we were. Okay. So consider that you are having a view prepared in your ABAP or in your SAP system called Z sample C view. But for example, I do have a Z sample C view over here, which is the Z sample C view over here. And now I want to consume something, or I can say I want to use this view for multiple purpose. So now my one of the purpose will be to get data for booking and travel at the same place at same time possible. And another purpose I can have is to get the data of booking only. I only want to get the data of booking. Another use case you can think of is to get the data of travel only. So what you have done is, like we used to do in ABAP, that if you don't want to write each and every query on the database table, if you don't want to expose this directly, you would create a SE11 view, and that SE11 view will going forward be used for all the queries that you are doing. Okay. So if you see that this view is something that I have created, now I want to fetch the data only for the travel. Okay. So what you will do is you will create another view, or I can say any sort of another consumption, be it an ABAP program or anything. Okay. So I'll just go over here and I'll just say I'll create one more CDS because we want ourselves to be comfortable more using the CDS. How? Because CDS is the base artifact for RAP application. Okay, so I'll just say that I want to fetch some sort of a data for I can say Z. Uh, I can say travel only. I'm just fetching the data from travel only. I am just fetching the data which are relevant to travel, but my consuming data source will be the view which I created and not the actual database table. That's what I am planning for. Now, if I just go over here, what we'll see is I'll just paste it over here. And here, in this particular case, if I just try fetching the data from this, and here if I just mention that I want to fetch data only relevant to travel, which can be my travel ID, agency ID, customer ID, booking date, and end date. Okay, so I'll just say I want to fetch the information. Travel ID, I am not interested in fetching the booking ID, agency ID, and only this stuff. So I'll just remove, for example, whatever I had over here. So I use this particular view for fetching the data for my travel only. But the moment I activate this view, you will see that you are getting an error over here. Or you are getting a warning over here, which says that you are trying to manipulate the key. The booking ID is the key which is missing over here. That is one thing. Another thing is, if I just run this as a application, you would see that you are getting duplicate data over here because you are trying to fetch the data only for the header, even though the view is having a information coming from both the principal information and the dependent, or I can say principal entity and dependent entity. If I just say right click over here, and if you just show the SQL create statement, you would see that your system is creating a view by fetching the information from the principal entity and the dependent entity, even though you are not asking for the information at all the time, the joins are created at design time. Okay, your view is created. Your view is created without even you asking that whether you will need the data from this both the table at all the time, or you are just creating the view from a futuristic perspective that going forward you might need the data from either of them or both of them. Okay, and that's the reason you are getting the duplicate data, because the join is getting triggered. Even though you are not asking for any information of a booking, your table travel is being joined with the booking and your data is being fetched while fetching the data from this, even though the columns that you selected are from travel. Instead, if I try rewriting this view with something called a association then. So ultimately now comes the concept of an association. That's where ultimately all this child level story, or I can say the school level concept, is something that I was teaching you guys. Okay. So now comes the concept of an association. So association helps you design, helps you design a runtime join. So there are two kind of join, one which is getting triggered at the design time, one which is getting generated at the runtime. So association helps you design the join which are coming at a runtime. Okay. Now what does it mean? That while you are generating the join should not get triggered. It will only get triggered. It should only trigger the join while you are requesting for it. So what does it mean? So for example, I'll just rewrite this block over here. I'll just comment this out. Maybe it would start throwing an error for a minute, but that's not an issue. I'll just select from my which particular table. So I'll just select the data from my travel table over here. Okay. And along with the travel, I want to have some sort of a association. Okay. So for one travel, how many bookings can be done? In a single travel, I can have a just empty travel ID. If my travel information is in preparation, I might not have decided. Or I can have n number of joins as well, or sorry, n number of bookings as well. So you can say your single travel can have a association 0 to n, or I can say 0 to star. So here the star terminology will be used to which particular table. So you can say you want to have an association with booking. Then you will have a keyword called as, which says that what will be the relationship call, what this relationship will be called. So this relationship will be called as a, I can say, bookings. You can name it as anything. I usually prefer adding a suffix, adding a prefix called at the rate. Adding a prefix called underscore. Okay, over here. And here, like we used to have an on condition over here, same way you will have an on condition. But before that, let's just clean this up. So as I don't have anything called T1, I'll just remove this. And before that, I'll also remove a couple of things. So for example, I'll just remove each and everything that I wrote over here. I'll just comment this out. And you will be able to add all the components over here. But one weird thing you would have seen that this is adding all the initials. That is something which I don't want. So I'll just add, comment this out for now, and I'll just remove this. Okay, now I do have a very good format over here. Now let's just start with this again. So I do have association. So this particular block, if you see, this is selecting data from my travel. It is having an association with booking, which says that for a single travel, I can have a 0 booking, or I can have n number of bookings as well. Okay. Now, while I am seeing that I can have n number of booking, what will be the joining condition? So I'll say on. Now, unlike in a join where we used to use the table alias, here we'll use one term called dollar projection. Now, what is a projection? So what is a projection view in S11 in our SAP ABAP? We used to have a projection view. Okay. Projection, it means projecting something. So for example, I do have a database table which is containing a column 1, column 2, column 3, likewise. But in my final view, so consider this is my DB table or any other DB source, database source, be it a CDS view as well. It can be anything. For final CDS view, which I'm creating as a projection, I want to have only C1 and C3 mapped. It means I'm creating a projection view where certain columns are, I am only projecting certain columns to the output. That is the meaning of a projection. So out of C1 and C1 to C4, I am only projecting C1 and C3. That is the meaning of projection. So it means whatever column that you are choosing over here, even though my travel can have n number of column, you are only choosing this one. So out of the projected column, if you just say control space, you will see that all the column that you named over here, travel ID, total price. So not only this, the one which you have aliased. This is the one that you want to join it based on your travel ID, which should match with the travel ID of this. So I can say underscore booking dot, I can say travel underscore ID. Okay. And now what the system would do is system will recognize that you do have a data coming from your travel. At the same time, you do have data coming from your booking. But as you can see, my final selection is only containing the column for travel. But how I can get the data from booking? So you will just simply say at the rate bookings, and then you will simply say over here that I want booking also over here. And what you are doing by doing this, you are ultimately exposing the association to the world outside. Okay, so I'll just say activate this. So the moment you activate this, you will see that your view is now created by associating two tables, associating two data source and not joining them. Okay, now what does it mean? First, if you just say right click over here and just show SQL create statement, you would see that your view is only created by fetching the column from travel table. You will not see any trace of that of the booking table that you had. The very first and foremost thing. Okay. Another thing you would see is earlier we used to have one view that we created by consuming the same view over here, the set sample C view, by fetching the columns from my base table. Okay. But at this point in time, we were getting some warnings. If I just do a syntax check again, you would see that this particular warning, which was saying that the key is something that you are not specifying as per what it should be in your base view, is now corrected because I do have only one key over here. Another thing, you are getting duplicate data over here. So if I just go over here and just say refresh, as you can see, you are getting unique data over here because the system knows that you are only willing to have the data from travel. Okay, now comes the question, what should I do if I want the data also from a travel as well as a booking? I mean, we are avoiding using any data from booking, but what about the other use case? What about the other use case where I want the data from booking and the travel at the same time? Then you do have the liberty to do that, right? So if I just go over here, I'll just say run as a web application. Okay, and here I'll just say that for this particular travel, how many bookings are there? I'll just say right click over here and there is an option called follow association, which will help you showing the association that it has. So it says it is having an association with booking. The moment you double click on this, you will see that two rows of the booking are getting selected. It means multiple, you are having multiple bookings on this particular travel ID. Okay. Now, if you want to do the same thing at your view layer as well, that's also totally okay. In this particular travel only view, you are just, let's just say changing your mind and you are having a changing a requirement and you are willing to have some sort of a oh, booking dot booking ID. And now, for example, I want I'll just activate this. Definitely, it will change the way your, I'll just close this because the column structure would change. As you can see, now you are getting the data from both of them. Instead, if you would have thought that you want to expose the view directly rather than changing this, you can directly expose the association however you got. You could have done that. I don't want to go in all this quick, but instead I also want that my base table, my view should have an association as well. So this is your actual view. This is your view that you are consuming, and this view will also get the association propagated to it because the data source which it is using is having an association, and same is getting cascaded by exposing it further. Okay, so you will be able to do that as well. Okay, so there is also very much possible. But what is the crust, or like what is the purpose of all this discussion? The purpose of all this discussion is that the foreign key relationship that we were having, we are going somewhere towards the CDS. My next target is going to the RAP. Okay. So when we say we are having an association, all we are saying is that for a booking to exist, there should be a travel. Without a travel, there cannot be a booking. And for that, there will be something that will come into picture called composition. So this is something that we are going to learn in a minute. And association is something which is a kind of a possible join. It means uh, there can be a join which can be, there can, or I can say there may or may not be a join always. So for example, by doing some other tweak, you can still insert the data into the database. So in a definitions term, people ideally says that if there is something called associations and compositions, associations are not strict join, whereas composition is a strict join. What is the meaning of a strict and not strict? So this is something that we are going towards. Once we learn the composition